This message is not peaceful. Even though you in the audience, I do wish peace on. The message that I have is not for them. They're not for you. I mean, it's for you to listen to, but it's not about peace with someone else. The message that I have is it's actually hostile towards the Chinese. But I want to get something straight, and I want to tell us some information that will be valuable to us. And some of you may think, well, damn, why would you say this? But if you hear me out, if you still disagree after what you disagree, I mean, hell, I don't pay your bills. But if you're going to disagree, hear me out. Then think about it. We already know what they're doing in China, and I'm sure it's concentrated in Guangzhou because that's where most Africans live. But we know what the hell they're doing in China. I don't have to tell you. In Guangzhou especially, they're taking people from the motherland, and I have not heard of them making any exceptions for African Americans, if they find them. They're taking people from the motherland and they're kicking them out, putting them out, making them homeless, not even letting them into malls to buy things. Granted, I do agree. And one thing that I think some of you who disagree with me on other things would agree with me on this, and that is that ideally we should have our own. That's true. And I'm sure there are African-owned businesses in Guangzhou. Yeah, I'm sure. I bet money that they're bound to be. I understand that the Chinese government found a new strain, and they were able to trace it back to an area in which a lot of people from the motherland live. But they didn't trace this strain back to the motherland. They traced the strain to a neighborhood in China that just happened to have a lot of people from the motherland. They aren't doing this to Italians, and they're not doing this to the British. What they're doing to Africans. Now, mind you, in the UK, it is such a disaster that the health system it's pretty much crumbling, and right now medical staff are advising the children of elderly patients to go ahead and allow them to illegally euthanize their parents. Your mom's got pneumonia. She's not going to make it. She's suffering. Let us give her a morphine mixture that'll let her pass away. Stuff like that. Now, morphine's a painkiller. I know it's not necessarily a main euthanizing agent, so I don't understand if it's supposed to be the dosage or if morphine is just incompatible with specific treatments for the things that a lot of elderly people are suffering. I'm not sure. What I understand is that more and more people in the UK are saying the hospital that's taking care of my mother or my father is telling us that we should just go ahead and allow them to euthanize the parents. They ain't gonna make it. And they're suffering. The reason they're saying this is because they're overwhelmed because they already got enough COVID-19 patients. Yet and still, and we know that Italy, they've already reached that point weeks ago where the doctors have to decide which ones to treat and which ones to just let die. In Spain, they got people sleeping in the hallways. So we understand that Europe, certain parts of Europe are really going through it. And guess what? The Chinese ain't doing a goddamn thing to no European. They're doing it to black people. So I'm gonna straight tell you. Straight like this. Nigerians, not the government, but population burned down a Chinese factory. Good. They had to. And this is me talking about southern Nigerians, but hey, look, they got to defend themselves too. They're not defending themselves from some kind of punishment that they deserved and earned. They're defending themselves from a treatment that they have not deserved and earned and provoked. Good. Because I would have done worse. I would have made them Chinese folk homeless out in the streets of Nigeria. You're going to sleep outside. It's a much better climate here than it is in Guangzhou anyway. Get your butt out there in the streets. And if I find out that anybody let you in their house to sleep, I'm going to kill them. No joke. Now, that being said, I'd be kicking them out of the malls. And I bet that's what's going to happen. The malls in Nigeria, I bet they're going to tell them Chinese, you get the hell out. And I'm all for it. Do it. There's one thing that I am afraid of, and that is because I do also have to think tactically, and we black folks have to think tactically. And we need to be on code about this. This is not a problem with Asians. This is a problem with China. That's all. The Japanese may not love you or hate you. They may have different ideas about you, but they're not doing what the Chinese are doing. If you don't like them, you don't like them. You can just keep a distance. South Koreans, some love you, some hate you, most of them are indifferent, but you know what? You could just keep a distance and not really bother them. You don't have to kick them out. What I'm saying is that our responses, we should make sure, are aimed specifically at the Chinese, not at other nationalities that ain't doing nothing to us. So if you Black American and you see an Asian walking down the street, don't go after them if you don't know that they're Chinese. They may not be. The Vietnamese don't necessarily hate us. They're different about us. I didn't say indifferent. I said they're different. They pretty much, they actually just generally don't hate us. And I'm going to tell you this. The Filipinos, the Malaysians, and the Indonesians, Laotians, and Cambodians, I can vouch for. They do not have a problem with us. They may have an issue with Nigerians because of cultural differences, but they don't have a problem with Black people. They are aware that everybody's Black is not Nigerian. They know this. They do not have a racial problem with us as a whole. So no, please do not go and start grabbing Laotians and Cambodians thinking that they're Chinese. Now, what I'm saying is very logical. And let's be clear, if we're going to retaliate against people because of what they've done, it's perfectly okay to say, I'm going to at least make sure that before I attack anyone or do anything or retaliate, that they are part of the group that's caused the problem. I want to make sure of that. I don't want to go after someone that just happens to have the same phenotype and blame them for something they didn't do and create more enemies for us. We don't need that. I'm not saying this so that these groups would necessarily become allies per se. I'm saying it for two reasons. Number one, whether they become allies is up to them. They decide that. They may not. It may be that it depends on nationality. But we don't necessarily need to go and create enemies that we did not have before. And these nationalities I named are not enemies to Black people. So don't go making them such. Do what you got to do with them Chinese. But please don't just grab any Asian you see, beat up on them. Even in Malaysia, when you see those signs on apartment buildings that say we don't rent to African Negroes, even when you see that, those are Chinese owned. The Malay people are not our enemies, I promise you. I've been there twice. I've been there with my wife once. I met her brother. All of them said the same thing. The Sudanese, the South Africans, the Somalis, the Senegalese, the Gambians, all of them that were there have said the same thing. They are not our enemies. The Malay people told me, we know that all of Africa's not Nigeria. We just got issues with Nigerians because they're loud, they talk this shit, and they're not nice to people. And we got problems with Arabs for the same reason. They don't like Arabs for the exact same reason. Arrogance and now the thing is this, actually, they know the difference between different Africans. If you really want to know the truth, they don't know the difference between different Arabs. They don't discriminate. Gulf Arabs go there and act arrogant. They discriminate against all Arabs, period. They don't like them. They're just now learning the difference between the Gulf Arab and the non-Gulf Arab. And even they don't like the other Arabs because all of them smoke. Gulf or not, they all smoke. And they all drive like they're crazy. There was one that killed a woman in a traffic accident. She was a pedestrian. He was driving with no patience. Couldn't stop at a light. He cut a red light. Pow, killed her. Now they're pissed at Arabs. So, people have grudges, and I just want us Black folks, because we do have enough enemies, to not go making enemies of people that aren't enemies. That's all. Do what you got to do. Teach them dog eaters a lesson. They're going to sit up here and exonerate the ones that oppress them and us, and then turn around and blame us and let their oppressors off the hook. No, man, go after them. I don't care what you do. I mean, I'm not saying you got to go after them, but whatever you want to do, it's up to you. Yeah, I don't really care. I don't think you should beat them on the streets in America. For legal reasons. It's not moral reasons. I don't care about them morally speaking anymore. But for legal reasons, I don't think you should go beating them on the streets. But if you're going to kick them out of your place of business, if you're going to tell them to get the hell up out your neighborhood, if you're going, whatever you decide to do, just make sure that it's actually against someone that's Chinese and not a Laotian, a Cambodian, a Vietnamese, a Japanese, a South Korean, even a Taiwanese. Just make sure you don't go after the wrong one. That's all, man. That's all I'm saying. And definitely, you definitely do not want to go after the Malays, whether they're Indonesian or Bruneian or Malaysian. You don't want to go after the Malay people because they really, really, really are sweet people. They don't start anything with anybody, and they never have a grudge with anyone until some people treat them bad or misbehave in their countries. They really don't. And they are a very fair set of people. I'll be honest with you. I've seen it with my own two eyes. They're the reason that I know that it's not the whole world that hates us. It's just a lot of them. They don't care about the propaganda. They're not willing to believe the propaganda of the colonizer. The Indonesians were colonized by the Dutch. The Malaysians were colonized by the British. They're not going to buy into the propaganda. They're just not. So all I'm saying is don't make an unnecessary enemy. Whether or not they become allies, well, that's up to them. I'm not sure that they will. I'm not holding my breath for it. But what I can say is this. If also there's another advantage, and I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to be done. The second advantage is that if you are measured in that response to make sure you're not getting another nationality that you might confuse with the Chinese, then you have a leg to stand on when you try to incite others against them as well. So that, because you see, the Chinese do not, the others don't really like the Chinese either. The Chinese have not shown much respect to these other groups of people either. Looking down on them and all this stuff. They know that. So if you don't go after them, you could ask them, listen, what's your first language? And they tell you some language, that it's not Mandarin, it's not Cantonese, or, they say something like, oh, Malayu or Thai or Laotian. And they'll probably say, did you think I was Chinese? You could be like, no, I doubted you were Chinese, bro. I doubted it. Plus, the Chinese, they don't treat you right. I know there has to be a difference because the Chinese don't like y'all either. Then they're going to listen. And that's when you got their ear at that point, and you can incite them to treat the Chinese a certain way. Just be like, man, do you let them come into your restaurants and stuff? Yeah. Why, man? Do you know how they talk about you when you're not in the room? Bro, they call you nigga and they're not saying it as a compliment. Oh, they call us that? Bro, yeah. Well, how do you know that? You just say, well, I learned the word for ape and monkey and nigga in Mandarin, and, do what you can to incite it. Or you could say, well, we know they talk about us, but then when we're in the room, they talk bad about y'all because they want us to look at them like they were up here and look at you like you down here. And we know what they're doing, but yeah, that's why they talk bad about you when you're not in the room, because they want us to look down on you. I don't take their word for it, though. Then they're going to start telling you, yeah, the Chinese, the exwives, they think they're better. And that's your inroads to incite them against a common enemy. And they got countries. We got countries in the motherland, if you want to count them as ours, and some people would say, no, we don't, that's a pipe dream, and that maybe not, maybe so. I mean, they are actually to a certain extent, they're under the control, but I must say that when Guinea arrested the Chinese citizens, I must say, you know what? Yeah, actually, I think they're learning a little bit more this time. I think so. It shows a sign that certain parts of Africa are learning step by step that ain't nobody gonna respect us until we respect ourselves and disrespect them. Yeah. So, if you think I'm saying this for emotional reasons or because I just love the Malay people because they're not us, you don't know who you're talking about. Not just what you're talking about, you don't know who you're talking about. I don't think that way. I've gone in on a whole bunch of other groups of people that are... I'm going in a bunch of other groups of people that have something against us, even when you can see more evidence of our blood in them. As a matter of fact, even as an SYSBM man, I have still said that black men need to limit interracial relationships to the races that have not gone against us. And right now, the only ones I know of are either not even of a different race, like, Afro-Latinas, same race, different language or something, or Southeast Asians. Because they just don't go against us like that. That's what I've been saying for the longest. And if you find another group of people somewhere, like, let's say you go into Melanesia, that's the Black South Pacific Islands, and they are cool with us. Okay, fine. You and her can work out something. Y'all like each other, go ahead. Because their people aren't against you. I've said that. So I'm going to tell you now, if these folks were not innocent, I wouldn't tell you this. I would not. I'm not even telling you necessarily to Yeah, I'm not necessarily even telling you to trust the South Koreans or the Japanese. I'm just saying they didn't do this thing right here. The Chinese did. So don't focus on them. If somebody's Japanese or Korean and you find this out, and just okay, leave him alone. I'm not saying go and make friends with him. I'm just saying leave him be. He's not a part of the problem right now. That's all I'm saying. I'm not even telling you to do anything that would get you thrown in jail, because you shouldn't go to jail behind some dog eaters. But if they're renting from you, which they probably would not do, but if they are, kick them out. Oh, you from China, huh? Man, you can fit the guck out of here. Here's here's the rent money that we owe you, or we'll prorate it. Now you get the hell out. You got 48 hours. Where are we going to go? Not my problem. Maybe back to China. Maybe you can go to China and live in one of them apartments that they kicked an African out of. That's racist? No. What your people did is racist. Now you get the hell up out of my unit so I can rent it to somebody else that doesn't eat dogs. More importantly, so I can give it to somebody else that wouldn't kick my people out of their apartments if they owned them back in Gwangju. I don't care where you go. It's not my business. You see, I'm just simply saying that. But when you retaliate, just don't go after somebody that's not part of this problem. That's all I'm saying. So that we don't have more enemies on our hands than what we had before. I hope that what I said benefits you, and I hope that one day it's not necessary anymore, because I also prefer peace like everybody else does. But hey, look, this is war. And they chose that. This ain't peace, so hey. Anyway, thanks for listening. And listen, hit the share button. Let Black America know this. And let the rest of the black world that speaks English know this too. For the same reasons that I'm telling you now. This ain't about emotionalism. It's just tactics. You don't go making enemies. They're going to come to you anyway. All right. Thanks for listening. Assalamu alaikum. Black heart, black mind, black out.